Hey guys, welcome to this OpenToonz tutorial. Today I have a pretty exciting tip for you guys, making a parallax background. Or, I guess, making is the wrong word for it. I mean, creating parallax in OpenToonz. This won't be a tutorial about how to make backgrounds necessarily, but yeah, so let's get started. So before I jump into OpenToonz real quick, I want to show you the background I'm going to be working with today. This wasn't actually made for like an animation background. This was just sort of like just a still image, just a digital painting that I made. Here's the original one. And as you can see over here on the layers, I didn't really layer it like very smartly. I just sort of, I don't know, I just made a lot of random layers and painted on them. Obviously it's fine for something like this because the results look okay, but I had to consolidate these down into layers that would be manageable with OpenToonz. So over here, this is the one that I made where I, deleted certain elements that didn't really fit and just have a plain old background ready. Over here you can see my layers are now, these ones are hidden, and I have the front, back, and sky. So I've pretty much grouped this into 3 different layers. So you can see here, there's that, and then the sky. So what I want to happen is when the camera moves in OpenToonz, that these things will start to sort of parallax and overlap, and you'll be able to see depth between them. And yeah, that'll give you an illusion of depth for a 2D animation, so just sort of like layering over it. So yeah, I'll have a link to the high-res version of this art piece in the description if you want to see it. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into OpenToonz real quick. So here we have the default scene here. And what we're going to want to do is import this image. So that is saved as a PSD. And yes, error. Alright. It's saved as a PSD on my computer in my art folder as background test. So I'm just going to drop this in, and then we're going to get this this load PSD file pop up, and it says load as single image. Well, that would load it in as a flat image, but we actually want to work with the layers within OpenToonz, so we don't want it to be a flat image. I'm going to load them in as separate columns. You could load them in as frames, you could load them in as columns. Frames I could see being helpful if maybe you made an animation sequence in Photoshop where each layer was a different frame. I don't really know why you would do that, but I mean, I guess Photoshop does have some animation tools, and you could probably easily transfer some of your Photoshop animations over to OpenToonz that way. But for this one, I want them to just be separate layers, so it's pretty much just what a column is in OpenToonz. So I'm going to select columns. And I'm not going to ignore the groups. So I'm going to actually put them in as expose layers in a group as columns in a sub X sheet. Actually, I'm not really sure what these options do, but I did the second one for the times that I was doing it, so that's what I'm going to stay with. I'm actually not sure what the sub X sheet does. I should really look into that. But anyway, I'll just click OK. Columns was really all I wanted. And now I have, see down here, I have a bunch of these. And I actually only want 3 of these. It imported more than I wanted. So I'm just going to go in and start deleting these, because I don't want like the watermark or anything like that. I think that's just blank. And there's like a lens flare element. I don't want that. And then another one. I don't want that. So I just want these 2. So there's the front the middle, and the back. Ooh, I think I'm starting to get sick, guys. Alright, so now that I have the 3 entered in, now we can just get to work creating the parallax effect. So before we begin making the parallax, I'm going to edit the camera real quick. And to edit the camera, you can edit the camera like resolution and aspect ratio. It's also the output settings for rendering. I'm going to show you how to render out an animation on this one as well. It's in settings, go to output settings. And you'll see here we have the camera settings. Camera 1, the default camera that loads up with OpenToonz. This is fine for our purposes, we don't really need anything else. So we're just going to go ahead and edit camera 1. And what I mostly want to edit is the resolution. Right now it's 768 by 576, way too low for our purposes, and not the aspect ratio that I want. I want this to be in HD, so I'm going to make the width 1920. And rather than making this 1080 for this purpose, I'm going to make it a CinemaScope anamorphic HD, which is a 2.35 aspect ratio rather than a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. So I'm just going to type in 2.3 or 2.35, and now it's set to 817 by 1920. Alright. And there was absolutely no reason why I want it set like that necessarily. It's just because that's my favorite aspect ratio and it's really cinematic and I think it's cool. So that's what I typically work in on just about anything. So now I'm going to zoom out to see the camera. And now the camera is obviously extremely big in comparison to this. But that's okay, as long as the resolution of the camera is set, scaling it down doesn't affect it. It'll still be in HD if you scale it down. So I'm going to go ahead and scale down the camera here to just about fit into this drawing that I have here. And scale it maybe slightly smaller, but not by much. So now, if we zoom in, we can see that it is centered on the camera. So, and we can always double check this too. If we click on this camera icon up here at the top, now you can only see what's in the camera, and you won't be able to see anything on the outside. And as long as no white spots are showing in here, then we're good to go. There's so much zooming difference between those two settings. Alright, so to create the parallax effect is actually extremely easy. You may not know this, you might, but OpenToonz is actually has a 3D interface. You're viewing this from the front, the X and Y axes, and by default everything's just on one flat plane, but you can edit it to go back into Z space if you want, and then the camera will automatically create a 3D effect, because I mean these elements are literally in a 3D space, which is really cool about it. Kind of similar to what Toon Boom does. And I think it's a cool feature that an open source software would have something like this, because it's handy and it's a quick way to get cool results. So I'm going to go up to the edit tool real quick, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to position. And what I want to edit is the farthest background here, the column 1 or the sky layer. And I can move it around and whatnot with the position tool. But if you hold Control, you'll see this little Z arrow, and you can just move it like this. And from the front here, it kind of looks like we're scaling it down, but we're not scaling it down, we're pushing it back in Z space. And we can actually view this in 3D space to get a good visualization of this. Where we, these 3 buttons here, if we click the middle one, we get this weird 3D camera view. But it's pretty easy to navigate. All you have to do is use these 3 tools. We can just zoom in here and you can select this hand on a swivel to rotate, and then this to pan. So moving around this space is easy and not a problem. It's just a good visualization of what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and start layering these accordingly. Go back to the edit mode, hold control, and just push it back. And if you can see what's going on here, it's actually moving further away, which is pretty cool. So this is the sky, so I'm actually going to push this considerably far back. Like there, that's about good. And this doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, if it's closer, you'll get less parallax. If it's further, you'll get way more. For these purposes, I would say the scale of this scape is actually quite large, so they're going to be pushed back quite far. And I'm going to do the same thing for column 2, the middle area, where the trees and the rocks are. And a good way to think about this is up to scale, maybe a person would be about this big. Think about that person like running down the side of the highway over here. Like, how far would a person that scale have to run to get to like these rocks over here? And then think about where you need to position it. So a man this big, probably these would be a lot further away than right here. So I'm going to go ahead and keep moving them back a bit to about maybe here. I think this looks a little bit better if a man were to run around the side of the highway over to these rocks. He'd probably be running about this distance of, I don't know, maybe like a couple 100 feet, like 200 feet or so. Not super far, but definitely not close. And, you know, I'm just kind of rambling again. So I think we're about done here in the 3D view. That's about all we have to do. Not too hard, pretty easy stuff. And now when we go back into the scene, you can see that it's all kinds of screwed up, because you can actually see the distance between them. We want it to still look like the original image, so we're going to have to scale up some of these elements. So I'm just going to go ahead and select column 2, and instead of position, I'm just going to select scale. So now I'm just changing the size of it where it is in Z-space. So it's still back there, but it's just getting bigger. So if I can just line it up to be about as big as it was on the drawing, then we'll just kind of start piecing this back together. Same thing with column 1. Make it a little bigger. Alright, cool. So now it looks pretty much exactly the same as it did when we started, except now we know that these are all spread out elements. Alright. And just to show what's going on here, if you select the camera in the edit tool and change position, you can see what happens when we move the camera. It's pretty cool, huh? It's a really cool effect, guys. It kind of makes me geek out a little bit. And think of all the cool animations you could do for, you know, so easily, just as long as you think about how to structure your backgrounds. And like I said, this background wasn't structured for this. Like, this was just for a digital painting. It wasn't for a layered background. I would think that you should put a little more thought into how you layer your elements, because the more layers you have, the cooler it will look. I only have 3 here, but logically speaking, it would be cool if these trees and light also layered behind these silhouette trees, and the buildings as well on their own layer. It would look probably a lot better. But also you have to think about, like, when layering your backgrounds, that it really only works if there's like a cutoff. Here, let me just try to draw what I'm talking about here. Just over to the side on column 4. Like, you can't really layer like flat elements like this. Like, it really only makes sense if like you layer like hills or something, because you don't want like for example on this road over here, like, it would be cool to have these trees moving separately from these, but if you think about it, these trees kind of lead into like the highway right here, and you don't want to split up the highway like this because then you'll have parallax happening on the highway, where some elements of the highway are, say, like here's the highway normally going into the distance, and then if you like cut parallax between the two, then you could have moments where you shift the camera and the highway is doing something like this, and then they're not connected to each other. So this illusion really works best when like things are sort of like layering like on top of each other, like if there's things in front and background where it's like easily distinguishable, rather than cutting up flat planes, because then you might just get a weirder look than it's worth. I hope I've explained that like well. It's kind of a yeah. I hope you get that. But anyway, moving on. So now I'm just gonna do a really quick camera animation, and I mean like really quick. Like what I want to do is I want to move the camera in Z space, which we can do with keyframes, and I'm pretty much just gonna come in and have it zoom out between one of the links in this fence, and then zoom back into this full view, and you'll be able to get a pretty good view of the parallax effect after the animation is done. So I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get rid of these cleanup settings right quick and move the column over to the side just so we can manage it a little bit easier. Alright, so this animation is going to be kind of long. I think I'm going to aim for about 200 frames. So we can select multiple columns, where we're going to have to extend the exposure of all these columns to be 200, because I mean if you go to the next frame then it's white, and you want them to last the entire scene. Pretty much all of your backgrounds that you're going to make in any of your scenes are just going to be one huge long exposure extended throughout the entire length of your scene. But we can easily do this by selecting multiple columns by holding shift, selecting one, holding shift, and then going all the way down to 3, and now we have them all highlighted. Just right click and select time stretch. Did it pop up? Where's my, oh, it's on the other monitor. It does that sometimes. Alright, so we're going to stretch selected cells, and the old range being 1, we're going to make the new range 200 frames, and enter, or not enter, just got to press the button. Alright, cool. So now we can see that we've extended it to 200. Alright. And now we're going to do some keyframing. I had gotten a comment on a previous video about these manual keyframes. We can't view where a keyframe is on the timeline necessarily and then hand edit them or move them around. You can do that in like Toon Boom or Flash. On the timeline, your keyframe would be represented by a little square black dot, which you'd be able to click and drag and select around, so you could move the spacing or timing of your auto-tuned keyframes if you wanted to, but it seems like you have to hand delete and edit keyframes within a column's edit mode, specifically in OpenToonz, which makes keyframing a little bit of a chore in my opinion. But so nothing, since the camera isn't on the column, we don't really like see any of the results of the keyframes. Like there's nothing to show for it. So you're just gonna have to remember to have it selected at all times when you're keyframing it. So we're gonna go ahead and go to the edit mode for the keyframes and select camera. So make sure it's on camera, make sure everything's where you want it to be. And first things first, I'm gonna go ahead and permanently keyframe this on 200, because I'm doing this right now because the camera is already where we want it to end. Like I want the full framed image to be the ending of this sequence. So I'm just going to select the keyframe button right here on 200 just to make sure that it's already recorded, that no matter what I do earlier on in here, it will always be interpolating back to this at the end of it. And I'm making these hand gestures that you can't even see, so I'm gonna go ahead and go up here to 1, and before I go any further, I'm actually just gonna go right into the camera's view, like right in here. The difference between these two is that you'll just see the outline of the camera and like the effects of the parallax on the whole scene, and I just want to see what's in the camera so I can just kind of hands-on do it. So that's why I'm selecting this view right here to do this. I mean, you can do it anyway and you can jump between them, but I find that it's a little bit easier to do camera movement within the camera view. So it's on camera, I'm on frame 1, and on frame 1 I want it to be really zoomed into the road right here. So I'm actually just going to move this camera forward in Z space like such. And then I'm going to sort of position it to, I don't know, a link in the fence that looks good. Like have a, maybe I'll have it like zoom into this one. So it's going to zoom in to this link on the chain. I want it to kind of come through the hole. Alright, so this is where it's going to start. And then this is where 200 is where it's going to end. And I'm just going to permanently keyframe this right here. And since that's already been made, we can sort of run through this animation and see that it's already starting to change. And it's going to sort of pan through and come out like this. And then come together like that at 200. So that's pretty cool. But I'm going to add just a little bit more motion to this. And, you know, you can do this really any way you want, but I mean, you can just sort of follow my lead here in your own projects, I guess. It's just sort of scroll through and scrub to where you want it to go. And as you can see, it's not coming out of the center. It's kind of clipping out off to the side. And I kind of want it to come out dead center. So at 36 here, I'm just going to sort of correct it a little bit. That's all I want. It's just to correct it to about right here and press the keyframe button. And now it's just added another keyframe, so from 1 to 36 is going to interpolate its own way, and from 36 to 200 is going to interpolate separately, so it's going to pass through just like this. And the cool thing about this is doing the 1 to 200 frames first means that the speed and the rate that the camera moves will always be the same. Like if you were to hand edit each of these all the way to 200, like where it is in Z space, then you're gonna get inconsistent motion. But since I've keyframed the proper Z motion between 1 and 36 already, if I just move the position of the camera on each frame, it will still be zooming out at the same rate, if that makes any sense. So it's something that you might have to think about while you're making these motions. Which motions do you want to be consistent throughout the entire scene, and which ones do you want to change up while it's going on? And then do the consistent ones first, and then do the changing up ones last, if that makes any sense. So I'm just going to scrub through here some more. And at about right here, and I'm just going by the visuals here, I kind of want the camera to pan off to the side a little bit, starting here. So I'm just going to keyframe this alone and not change anything. And then I'm going to zoom out just a little bit more to about here is good. And I'm just going to sort of lower it down just to give off a little more parallax. As you can see, like the lights from the cars are being like almost entirely absorbed by the sign. This is going to be like a weird camera motion. You probably wouldn't want to put a camera motion that looks like this in an animation, but this is just to show off as much as we can of this specific parallax in the scene. Again, not really making this to look pretty. Alright, and now it's going to zoom back out, but we have a little bit of a problem. It's kind of swinging around, and you can sort of see that the backgrounds are cutting off. And you don't really want it to do that. So I'm just gonna like zoom out until I find like about the maximum extent of how much it swings like that. about right here. As you can see, it is extending outwards, and then it starts to shrink. I'm gonna go about to the middle of that. I hope what I'm doing makes sense. I'm just trying to like close up this white gap. That's literally it. I just go over here and move it like such and keyframe it. And now when we go back, you can see it's not doing that anymore. And then it's just going to zoom back out to its natural state, which actually is clipping off just slightly. Alright. So I can go ahead and play this on loop, and you can see what's going on here. Alright, that's pretty nice. And the zooming out motions can look a little bit weird in these, in like an animation where they're layered like this. I mean, they can look pretty cool in a lot of cases, but I think these sort of effects shine the most when you're just doing side scrolling type pannings. Less this is what I think is called a truck out in an animation. More like a pan, or like a, you know, shots. Those tend to get a little bit less weird problems, because obviously this whole image is flat back here because you're not getting a lot of movement back here, so you know, it does look a little bit strange, but it definitely looks better than not having it like that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. And that's about it for what I want to be done in OpenToonz itself. Just another thing to talk about though real quick is you can see how these edges are kind of jagged. I actually don't have a solution for that. If I go back into Photoshop and go to the original artwork, you can see that my lines are, most of these lines in here are semi-transparent, and you know, the strokes look a lot nicer, and the overall final image of this one looks a lot more well put together than it does in OpenToonz, where these lines have become like really thick and scraggly. And I think that's just because OpenToonz can't handle semi-transparency very well. And there's not a lot of settings to play around with when you import these images, so I don't actually know if there is a solution or a way to import it that makes it so that this doesn't happen. I think that it's just something that you'll have to live with, and maybe specifically try to make your edges where things are transparent not semi-transparent, which is easier said than done, especially when you're digital painting. So, you know, that's all I wanted to talk about with these like jagged lines, and it doesn't seem like it's all that good at anti-aliasing these layers. I don't really know how to fix that, but now that our animation is completely done from 1 to 200, let's go ahead and export this animation. And all I'm going to do to export this animation is go to output settings, and we already edited the camera here, so we're good on that. I'm just going to go look at these bottom settings right here, and here's where it's going to render out to. Save in outputs folder. Let's save that on my desktop. And that error again. That's so weird. I'm just going to go to my desktop. I use my desktop too much. I know. And choose that. And I'm going to name this, you know, something simple like background test. And then here is where we save the file type. So, you know, if we have it set to export, a TIFF would be a single image. We're going to select a movie format. You could select either AVI or MOV. I'm going to select MOV because I don't really like AVIs that much. And I'm not going to worry about any of this stuff, this resample stuff here. not in this case. I wouldn't be able to tell the difference for this animation. I don't really think so. So I'm just going to go ahead and exit out of the output settings. And now to render this out, you have to go to the render tab up here, which doesn't show in cleanup. It only shows in the palette edit and X sheet, which is kind of strange that like they don't all just show up here, but you're going to have to scroll over to the X sheet in order to render this out. So now that our output settings have been done, all we really have to do is just go to render, and it will start rendering it out at the location that you have designated. Alright. Then you can see the OpenToonz own video player comes up, where you can see it playing through. Not too bad. And you can go to the location, which is just my desktop, which is right here on my second monitor. So I can just go ahead and double click this MOV file and bring it up here. And look at that, that's pretty cool. And since I have it set to the anamorphic widescreen, you can sort of see these two big black bars, which make it look kind of a cinematic here. Alright, I'm going to play it one more time. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll definitely have more for you guys. It's a really cool effect. I'd like to see what you guys do with it, combining all sorts of elements like, you know, people walking and stuff. I mean, you can make some really cool looking animations. You can definitely tell that, you know, Ghibli does use this. I think this this 3D layering right here, just a bit of history. I'm pretty sure that Ghibli decided to use this software, or work with the company and developers for this software for Princess Mononoke, which is which, you know, has a lot of 3D elements, and it's very fast paced with a lot of action. So they had a high demand for these kind of effects, and they really needed it to be done. So one of the first animation softwares of the time, I believe, to implement the sort of 3D workspace within a 2D workspace to get things done quickly. Yeah, you know, just a little bit of information for you guys. But yeah, like I said, comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll definitely have more for you guys. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Alright.